In a world that is quickly moving towards the electrification of everything around us, it has become abundantly clear that we need technological breakthroughs in how we extract lithium from the ground. More specifically, how do we make the vast amount of lithium brines in the United States economical? To take a deep dive into this and more, I'd like to welcome world-renowned Berkeley University scientist Dr. Brett Helms. Brett, welcome.
Thanks, Brandon. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We're going to go through a very interesting discussion on direct lithium extraction, DLE, and what you're going to be working on and all that kind of stuff with Max Power. But I'd like to first start off with who you are and what you've been working on, because you have a very interesting background and I would love to learn a little bit more. For those who are looking to get that better understanding, where's your education focused on and what have you been recently working on as well?
Great question. Yeah, so I got started getting my PhD at Berkeley in organic and polymer chemistry. And, really my emphasis in those days was on how to design polymers for function. And as my career has matured, I've really been motivated by designing polymers to address challenges in sustainability and in energy. And it turns out that lithium, the currency of the future, I think, for electrification, is one of those areas that intersects both energy and sustainability. So, for example, if we're considering efficient ways to extract lithium to meet future demands for batteries for electric vehicles, right? The device itself, a battery, is squarely in the energy sort of bucket, but the value to society at large is the dramatic reductions in carbon emissions that's achievable with a battery, and that ties into sustainability. And it's that intersectionality that makes us think about, what are the types of materials that let us efficiently extract lithium so that we can make sure that promise for the future is delivered.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And that is an amazing promise for the future generations of all humans in this world. And it's important, though, that we find advances in direct lithium extraction, because it's so important for us to be able to get to these vast brines that are out there right now and be able to make them economical. Out of curiosity, they currently aren't right now, or at least a lot of them are. Some of the ones in Chile are and things like that, but we have so much in the United States and in Canada that we could be tapping into. But what do you think the missing link right now is in the DLE process when it comes to scaling for the large production like you were just talking about?
Excellent question. So I think North American brines in the US and in Canada are typically low in parts per million of the lithium in those sources. So with that in mind, it's important for any lithium extraction technology to be able to work with significantly larger volumes, because obviously you have to, for the same amount of lithium that you get out, you have to work with, sometimes 4 to 10x more volumes. It's important to develop a process enabled by the materials that let you work with those volumes, while also making sure that the total energy and cost to extract the lithium from that resource is managed and profitable for those who are taking on the risk to commercialize such a process and technology.
Yeah, and speaking about the process and technology itself, what will you be working on specifically at Berkeley University in collaboration with Max Power?
We're excited to develop a membrane-based approach for direct lithium extraction. This is a great collaborative opportunity between Berkeley Lab and Max Power. In particular, the types of brines the Max Power is interested in, as are we, involve pre-treating the brine to make it possible to move that brine through a direct lithium extraction system that uses a selective membrane. And that selective membrane is made by my group. And then our collaborators, also at Berkeley Lab, are handling the pre-treatment steps. The magic comes from the polymers that we use to selectively pull out the lithium and we leave all of the other metals alone. And so it's a technology that builds on some of the membranes that we have developed at Berkeley Lab in my research group over the past years. Initially, we developed these types of membranes to move lithium in lithium metal batteries. And it turns out that their functions can be translated from a battery to the lithium extraction process itself. And that was something that really opened up the door to new types of partnerships and really got us rethinking what is possible with direct lithium extraction, particularly for some of these North American brines that, again, require something like a membrane-based process to deal with the significant volumes required to pull out the lithium.
Yeah, because right now, many, if not all, of the DLE technology currently out there are utilizing sorbents with brines. What is the difference between sorbents and membranes, and why may a membrane approach be more effective over others with lithium separation methods?
Excellent question. I think that it is highly likely that given the diversity of brines that are available throughout the world, that some technologies are going to be more suitable for certain brines than for others. And again, some of these will have dispersed solids. Some of them will have, high concentrations or low concentrations, depending on where you're getting them from. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that it's this technology resource fit that is something that is critically important for us to entangle as a community. We have, gone through this process of down selecting different types of technologies for the brines in North America. And we see significant opportunities for a membrane-based approach to offer advantages over those from the absorption-based approaches. In particular, for membrane-based approaches, you can run them with higher throughput with respect to volume. And the membrane itself is something that is sort of passively engaged in the selective transport of lithium ions relative to all of the other ions in the brine. And it's that process that allows you to operate it continuously and meet the volume requirements for the low lithium ppm sources that are predominantly available and low cost. When you look at adsorption, on the other hand, adsorption requires you to first bind the ion to the sorbent, but then you have to release the ion from the sorbent. So it's an active process involving chemistry, right? That means that there's waste tied to that process of extraction. And it's also true that for many of the materials used as sorbents, that chemical process required to release the lithium is also something that causes deterioration of the sorbent. And in a membrane-based approach, because the harsh chemicals are avoided, the membrane stays, stable and functioning for considerably longer lifetimes than the polymers and other materials used in the sorbents. And so from a CapEx and OpEx point of view, as well as the throughput achievable, the direct lithium extraction processes enabled by a membrane have advantages for the types of brines that we discussed.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're quite confident on the work that you've been doing and that you believe you can be successful at this as well. But I'm just curious, is there anyone else currently testing with membranes right now? And if not, why do you believe that is so?
I think what you find is that more and more membrane work in this area has started to, percolate up, right, from the universities in their external engagements with industry, much like ours has with Max Power. And I think that speaks to, this a little bit of an upending in the field. I think, the players that have touted the advantages of the sorbents do so because those processes are more mature in their technology development. And it's really novel materials that often provide the breakthrough that make, that give optionality, right? In terms of what processes can scale and on what basis and to what end. And really, I think the discovery efforts coming out of the national labs, ours included, my group included, I think the materials advances that are coming are doing so because the capabilities that we have built, not just in materials, but discovery and high throughput strategies that lead to accelerated data-driven design of a lot of these materials. This has become, I think, the type of breakthrough that makes the membrane-based approaches come alive. And I think ours is rather unique and interesting, and why this partnership has grown. And I hope it continues to grow as we begin to report some of our first results.
Fantastic to hear. And in talking about reporting your results, and especially as they start coming out, it's all about who can hear those results and how do you bring it to the rest of the world. I find it very interesting that you were hand-selected to be a part of the World Materials Forum, and we're recently at their annual meeting as well. What is this organization, and what is the main purpose behind it? But also, was there a main theme at this year's conference that stood out to you?
That's a great question. I've been a part of the World Materials Forum since 2017 with a company I started, Sepion Technologies, which commercializes membranes that are lithium conducting. And we had won the Whittaker award, which is part of their startup competition. This led to now a years-long, really substantial engagement and community building efforts. And it's one of these organizations that links many of the decision makers in industry with innovators and entrepreneurs that are coming out of universities and labs and other places, small companies. And it's that cross-section of people where we begin to understand the common problems, our common goals, and our common interests, and where we begin to, think less about, trying to achieve our goals in a siloed way, but reorient ourselves to think about how partnerships can be the enabler, right, to getting some of these technologies off the ground and deployed when and where they matter most, and ideally with an eye towards energy and environmental justice, considering the context by which many of these technologies, it's often to remedy various harms associated with some of the incumbents. I think one of the standouts in this particular meeting of the World Materials Forum, so the 2023 meeting, was that we're very carefully looking at metals, whether it's extraction or recovery with respect to circularity and recycling from a variety of sources. And I think that, in as much as our current partnership between Berkeley Lab and Max Power has considered these membrane-based direct lithium extraction approaches for resource extraction, it may be that that similar devices are relevant to the discussion of managing lithium in circular manufacturing. So, for example, thinking about taking batteries at end of life and recycling and recovering the lithium and other critical minerals and metals from them at end of life using a membrane-enabled approach. So we've started those discussions as well with members of the forum, and we'll orient ourselves to those challenges. It's obviously a different separation process, getting lithium out of battery recyclates versus those coming out of the ground in the brines. But it's opportunities like that which help you understand that maybe if you care about both things, you don't have to develop a completely new technology for both, right? Maybe there are ways to deploy some of the things that we have built up in one area and deploy them in another, if they have that translatability.
Absolutely fascinating to hear, and I appreciate you going into that, because we all know that as these EVs continue to age, sooner or later we will need to find a solution to recycling those batteries. So just found out right now that this may be something that you may have a solution for as well. So again, fascinating to hear. Lots of work ahead, of course, but it's very, very interesting to hear about everything you're doing with Berkeley, with the collaboration in Max Power. I can't wait to hear some of your findings. So Brett, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for speaking with investors and really the world about what you're working on right now. It has major implications for the electrification of the world. And again, just very excited to see what you come up with. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks again, Brandon. Happy to be here.